This happened about 12 years ago, while I was studying aeronautical engineering. Due to some money-grubbing legislation tactics, most who have gone to college know about the unnecessary courses that are tacked onto the degrees in order to graduate. One of those courses for my degree was a business class. Seriously, you'd think these guys would understand that most engineers don't do the business side of things. Thankfully, we had a teacher who was understanding of the fact that many of us in the class were bored out of our minds. I'll admit to having always been a geek/nerd who loved making good grades. If I don't understand something, I run at it hard to try to change that. This class stumped me for quite some time, and then a nightmare of a project was announced. One worth 50% of our grades. The school was a small one, the class a little more than 30 people, and I was assigned to work with 3 people I knew from other classes. We had problems straight away. 2 of the people remembered me from a calculus class that they barely passed as the person who sailed easily through and decided to dump their portion of the work on me straight away, knowing I wouldn't allow myself to fail. They were right. At first, my other group member tried to pick up the slack as well, pulling hard to do a difficult project in a subject we barely understood. I'll admit she was a trapper. Unfortunately, she was also someone easily manipulated, and our 2 slacking group members began applying pressure during the semester for her to take the work and allow them to present it. The day of the project finally comes, and I'm sick as a dog, pretty much quarantined in the clinic due to bronchitis. I managed to send a message to the teacher. The 2 slackers managed to wrangle the presentation from the girl who worked with me and presented it to the class, declaring that they had done all of the work and I was skipping class because they had told me that they were going to tell the teacher what happened. My initial grade was an F. I was beyond pissed until I realized something important. Part of the project involved a written report, of which I held the only copy since I was the one to type it up. Cue the revenge. Privately, I went to the teacher with my notes and the report in order to get the grade I earned and to get him in on the plot. He agreed since it seemed fun and he planned to fail them anyway for academic dishonesty. Publicly, there was no report. The classmates that had attempted to take all the credit began to approach me, first demanding the report. Most of the time, my response was, "But I didn't do any work," in a sickly sweet voice. Next, they attempted to act all buddy-buddy, trying to convince me that it had all been a joke and promising that they'd tell the professor that I had done some work, giving me some credit so that I had the possibility to pass. This was met with stony silence on most occasions before I told them that I'd rather fail than let them pass. Things escalated after that to include the door of my dorm room being rapped on at odd hours of the night, shoving, and them stealing my backpack and notebooks in order to try to find the report themselves. One of them even asked my roommate to let them search for a report I had written and forgotten for our group. Didn't have her as my roommate the following semester. Things finally came to a head on the last week of classes. I had held out on them for a month, not telling any of my group mates what I had done, and enough time had elapsed that even if they were to turn in the report now, it would be so late that they'd still have failed. They hadn't even attempted to do the report themselves, and the girl who had worked with me was in hysterics over the very real possibility of failing the class. It was what the teacher and I had been waiting for, and he finally decided to return the reports. The 2 slackers glared daggers at me as the teacher returned the report of every other group in the class before stopping in front of them. He was holding what looked to be one extra report, and they were immediately looking hopeful. He set a single sheet of paper on one of their desks before moving to the desk of the girl who had worked along with me and set the report on her desk. I had to dock some points for dishonesty, but you and your partner did decently, he stated before moving on. My partner realized what I had done. We only got an 82 on our project, but it was far better than the 0 that our ex-group mates received. I had been carefully documenting the harassment that the 2 slackers had put me through and ensured several witnesses saw some of what they did. 2 days after being informed that they were failing, the pair had a new problem. I gave the evidence to the administration of our school, and the teacher reported the academic dishonesty. The administration did a bit more digging and found that the pair had been making trouble for some time, and a number of students reported similar problems of having their work stolen. The slackers were expelled. On New Year's Day of 2018, I resolved to get in shape. I was never overweight, but growing up in Russia and spending my very early adulthood there, I smoked like a chimney and my cardio was garbage. Going to college in America didn't help matters because I started drinking to go along with my smoking. I decided to start going to spin class. I work at a marketing firm and chose a particular spin class because I received a free year-long membership as a holiday office party present that year. It was a generous gift because it was a trendy, pricey boutique spin studio. I've ridden bikes my whole life, so I thought, how hard can it be to ride a bike that doesn't go anywhere? But my first day in class was a rude awakening. It was clear that the class that I was attending, an early morning class for people to attend before work, was an advanced one where a majority seemed to already be part of the culture and very fit. It was obvious I couldn't keep up. The instructor was really nice and told me that since I'm new, it's a good idea for me to ride up front so that I can watch him and copy what he does more accurately, or alternatively, he can easily see what I'm doing and offer alternatives if I'm not doing things right. I thought, what a great guy and what a great class. There were these two other students in the class, though, who gradually made my morning spin classes suck. Valerie was obviously very fit. She looked like a model and obviously worked hard to look as good as she did. Boris was her male equivalent. They were both about my age, maybe a few years older, but it was clear that they were far more fit than me. They were obviously very invested in that particular gym's culture, in that they were always decked out in the store brand athletic wear. I'm not going to lie. They looked good wearing it. They weren't a couple, but it was obvious that Boris had a thing for Valerie, and Valerie was aware of it, and not reciprocating. Whatever they were doing, it wasn't my business. That thing about both of them being far more fit than me, they didn't let me forget it. For some reason, they seemed to take offense to the fact that I was riding up front. I can see why. The front 2 rows were filled with the very strongest, fittest people. The let's take a selfie sort of gym people, except these ones seemed actually fit. At the same time, all the other super hot girls and guys, especially the guys, were very nice to me and didn't seem to care that I rode up front, whereas Valerie and Boris would always shoot these sideward disgusted glances at me or smirk. I'm not a confrontational person, so I wouldn't do the thing most would do in that situation, such as say, "The fuck is your problem, bitch?" I always got to class super early to dress up and adjust my bike. The gym has a policy: first come, first serve when it comes to choosing one of the 30 bikes in the studio. I noticed a lot of other people show up early who were also clearly less fit than the stars that occupied the first couple of rows, but they seemed to self-segregate into the very back. I was still new as it was my first couple of weeks, so I sat up front because I was still finding my rhythm. I'd sit right up front where the instructor told me, so that I could watch him, and he could watch me. Every time he would come in, he would greet me enthusiastically and praise me for my commitment to fitness. It was little wonder his class was so popular. Everyone held him in high regard. Sometimes in class, he would shout encouragements to the class as a whole, but also give personal shout-outs to certain students. Despite the darkness of the room, when the instructor said, "Great job there, OP, you're KILL in it," I noticed both Boris and Valerie give each other a look and shake their heads, laughing. I never knew for sure why Valerie hated me, but I think it might be because we were both Russian, and no one else who went to that early class seemed to be, and she wanted to be the only East Euro girl. Who knows? As for Boris, he followed Valerie because he wanted to get in her pants. Boris and Valerie usually showed up right when class was starting and the whole place was packed, and yet they were so entitled that there were always 2 bikes up front, right next to each other, reserved for them. Despite the crowd, at 5:30 a.m., there were still a couple of empty bikes in the middle or back, but that wasn't good enough for them. I'd be right in the front row, too. I got there early, and it was my right to sit wherever I please. And yet, despite them showing up at the last second, they shake their heads at me, like I'm the one who's got a lot of nerve. Well, this goes on day after day for a whole month, and despite the fact that I'm no longer new, and I'm starting to get more fit and don't really need the instructor so much just to survive the hour on the bike, I still sit right up front. I thought maybe the particular bike that I was selecting had some significance to Valerie or Boris, and that's why they copped such an attitude all the time. I always rode on the same bike. By this time, I was a bit chummy with a lot of the other women, and knew their names, and we'd hug in the morning. I thought I should make peace with Valerie, if not Boris, who always sort of gave me a "I hate you because Valerie hates you, but if there was no Valerie, I'd totally go out with you" vibe. So when I saw Valerie that morning, as usual, she showed up right when the class started and sat next to me. I politely asked, "Was this your bike before, and you were used to it? We can trade if you like." She rolls her eyes at me and gives Boris a look, and like a donkey he smirks too. She actually says, "You should sit in the back. We're motivating people up here and you're hogging the mirror space." There was a whole wall mirror in front of the classroom. I'm thinking, what is this, high school? What the actual fuck? You've got to be 30 fucking years old and you're acting like this. And seriously, you may be fitter than me, but I'm just as tall and don't weigh any more than you do or take up any more space in the mirror, and it wouldn't matter even if I did. We're adults, or at least I am. Sigh. That's what I wish I said. Instead, I just put my head down and went on with my class. Eventually, I got so familiar with the other students because the same regulars would come to class every day that we all became social media friends. I even became social media friends with the instructor. I don't post much on social media. I don't show where I work or every single thing I do or my random brain farts. I just post the occasional photo. On one of these rare photos, where I was admittedly begging for approval because I was proud of developing abs, the spin instructor himself commented how proud he was of me. A lot of people from spin class also said nice things. I was friends neither with Valerie nor Boris on social media, but they both liked the instructor's comment on my photo, and my guess is it's because they both liked to kiss his ass. They certainly never showed me any kindness in class, unlike everyone else who was supportive of me. I clicked on their names, and my suspicions were confirmed. Both of them practically lived on social media and took endless selfies, showed off their bodies, humble brag nonstop. They also made no secret of who their employers were. Valerie tried to claim she was a model, even though it was clear her only real job was being a sales rep for a beauty brand. Valerie was only a model in the take a picture of yourself using your iPhone in front of the bathroom mirror sense. So Valerie, I guess, that makes me a model too. These two were such idiots that they'd post really dumb things on each other's walls. It didn't seem like they really had lives other than to talk trash against people. I saw that they had one exchange where they were clearly talking about me. How do I know? Because they actually said my name and said that I was ugly and a wannabe and skinny fat and all this other horrible shit. They also talked a lot about other people in the class and said horrible things and actually named names. It doesn't seem like they were friendly with the other people, even the very fit people who in some cases were even fitter. In terms of the class, they were social media friends with the instructor and some of the other teachers on the schedule, and with each other, but not with anyone else. Anyway, I actually confirmed my suspicion that Boris was locky thirsty. After the spin instructor made a nice comment on my picture and Boris saw that I existed online, he sent me a private message asking me to go for coffee sometime. I ignored the message, which is just as well, because the next time in class he ignored me and just followed Valerie's normal smirk and push routine. I don't like to start drama, but I don't like being bullied and trashed either. I screen captured and saved a lot of both Valerie's and Boris' comments where they trashed at least a dozen people in our class, and then made a dummy Facebook account. I fired off every screen capture to the owner of the studio, not just the manager of that particular branch, but the owner of the whole company in a dityon to the branch manager. I let them know that these two cretins were trashing many people in the morning class and creating a hostile, unwelcome environment. I was also nice enough to send the appropriate screen captures where Boris and Valerie named specific people in the class to those actual people if their accounts weren't set to where only friends could message them or post on their feeds. In less than a week, Boris and Valerie were gone. Both had their memberships revoked and were banned from every one of the brand studios. Several of the people that Valerie insulted were sufficiently offended that they sent emails to Valerie's employer. Valerie, as previously mentioned, made no secret of where she worked, about what a hateful, body-shaming person she was, and how such a person should not be any kind of brand ambassador. From what the other girls in the studio tell me, Valerie got fired from her job. Don't worry, Valerie, you still have your modeling career of taking selfies in your panties next to your toilet in your apartment. I had the pleasure of seeing some of the less patient, ripped buff dudes in class who didn't find it amusing that Boris was telling Valerie on Facebook that he could kick anyone's ass in class, openly offer to let him test his theory, anytime, anywhere. Unfortunately, Boris was too occupied up front, getting his membership canceled and being refunded, and being told to never come back, please, to make such arrangements. See ya, asshole. Boris had a wannabe, unlicensed personal training business that he talked about on Facebook, and several of the men in class who had legit training certificates shut him down with a quickness. There's always Starbucks. Maybe I'll go for coffee sometime and buy it from you, Borisista. As for me, I still show up early, but I usually find my comfort zone in row 2 now, or even further back. There's always new students, and I like for them to sit right up front so that they feel welcome. That's what it means to be in a fitness community. Everyone's welcome. This isn't some kind of high school cafeteria. You can't sit with us, bullshit. I loved the class so much I kept going into 2019 as a paying member, even after my free year was finished. In 18 months, I posted 3 pictures related to the spin class. That 4-pack is coming in nicely. Lol. From certain lighting angles. Anyway. Goals. Sigh. Haven't smoked in ages. Still drink like a fish. It's the Russian in me, I think. I honestly hope Boris and Valerie grew up. I low-key hope they marry because they deserve each other. Though I also hope they don't breed because that much narcissism from 2 parents would result in a kid with lots of issues.